All right, we're live.
Wow.
So we're going to just hang out for a second and wait and see if anybody pops on.
Okay.
And we will start the discussion right at about 6:01, 6:03. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool.
So you share this to that group, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's shared. Speaking of, let's make sure we get it in there. So we share it to the group and we share it to I actually have to share it though, which is kind of annoying. So hold on.
You're fine.
I need to go to my 8 pages. I have so many. It's so bad.
Like Facebook groups?
Yeah. Okay. You gotta make sure that it comes up. All right. I see us. We're live. So cute. Share. More options. Done. Share. Right post. Post. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
So I have got a really special guest today. I'm really excited. It kind of happened organically. We just had Taylor and Jason on, and I was talking to Taylor the other day, and she was like, "I have the perfect person to come on and do this," and she connected me with Sam, and I know Sam kind of. We've met one time at Taylor's wedding. And I just loved her. She's so sweet and so supportive of Taylor and people in recovery. And she's not an addict, and I'll let her tell you kind of a little bit about that. But with that, here is Sam. And Sam, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself and tell us kind of what this live is going to be about, and then we'll just jump right in.
Okay. My name is Samantha. I'm 24. I live near Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not an addict. I am a child of addiction and a friend to addicts, multiple addicts as friends, but I personally don't suffer from addiction. And like you said, I met you through Taylor, who if anybody knows Taylor watching this, I have been friends with since I was like 11.
Yeah, long time. Okay, so you said you're friends with multiple addicts, and so I know we were talking a little bit before we kind of hopped on live, and you had mentioned kind of the first addict in your life, and I'm incredibly grateful that you're willing to talk about that, because I think a lot of us in recovery kind of have that same experience, and then we turn to drugs and alcohol, and so I'm interested to hear about kind of the first addict in your life and what that looked like for you.
Okay, the first addict in my life would be my mom. My mom became addicted to drugs and alcohol when I was 4.
Mm-hmm.
She would use drugs and alcohol socially before then, but it became a problem when I was around 4 or 5, when she lost an important person in her life that died, and she couldn't cope with it. So that's when she started using. And I remember her always being honest with me about it, which is super strange when you think about it, because, I was 5.
Right.
But she always told me the truth, like mom has a problem, like I do this and I shouldn't. This is why we do these things, and you can't tell like this and that. And I mean, that's been since as long as I can remember. And that started around 5. And then she got sober when I was 15. And then when I was 22, she suffered a relapse.
Wow. So she had, 7 years then, right? So you've had 7 years of your mother sober and then kind of watched the path go down. So I'm curious if you could just kind of walk us through what it felt like, could you, so when you were that young, right, and your mom got sober, could you tell that that something had changed?
When I was 15?
Yeah.
Yes. 'Cause my mom, if she's using or if she doesn't have any and she's going through that rough time,
Mm-hmm.
she is a snake. She's just mean. It's
Yeah.
not someone you want to be around.
Right.
She'll fly off the handle at the littlest things, or she'll go through that phase, or she'll sleep for 14 hours and then wake up and eat a brownie and then go sleep for 18 hours. You know what I mean? So once I realized those ups and downs stopped, that's when I realized that she was good. And I mean, she was honest with me throughout the whole process. And like Taylor, my mom had to go to jail to get sober.
Wow.
So
your mom went to jail when you were what, 14, 15?
My mom's been in jail a lot. But the time that stopped her, I was 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your mom went, where were you at? So when your mom would go to jail, where would you be?
So, okay, I did not live with my mom growing up.
Okay.
My mom actually had to sign over custody of me to my grandmother, her mom.
Okay.
Because she wasn't a fit parent, and she knew that. So she ended up signing me over to my grandmother, who raised me from that whole time. And then once I was 15, my mom, she had went to jail. She met this man who is the love of my life. He's wonderful. He's my stepdad, but they're divorced now. And like, I still live in his home. So when she got with him is when she got straight, because they helped each other. Neither one of them were on a very solid path in life, but they had things that the other one didn't, and it was like a match, like they helped each other a lot. So when she had went to jail that last time, me and my friend Spencer, who was living with me, we moved in with my mom and John.
Okay.
And then
out of your grandparents' house and with your mother. She had gotten sober, you were 15, and y'all moved in with mom.
Yes.
Okay.
But up until then, I didn't live with my mom.
Okay, so then you get to live with your mom in like this new environment, and she's sober. So what was that like? What was it like having your mom back in those 7 years?
That was like, okay, so I used to have this kind of not realistic expectation for what your mom and your daughter, like that relationship is supposed to be like. I had something that wasn't, something that I knew was never going to be because of who my mom was.
Okay.
And so when that started, when I moved in with her and she was sober and she was good and she was just wonderful, that irrationality that I'd put in my head for years at like 7 and 8 that I wanted so bad was actually happening. So like, call your mom when you're sad, or she'll help you through this, or she'll help you through that, or she'll do this, or she'll do that. Because previously it wasn't like that. If I called her, she wasn't going to answer or whatever. But then it was, I could just walk into her room and talk to her if I needed a pick me up, So it was a real game changer in my life, because I always craved that love and like just closeness.
Right.
So once she was sober, I actually had it. So it was probably the best couple years of my life once she was good.
Okay, so walk me through that. So you lived with mom for that whole 7-year period, or okay. And so when did you notice a change? Because like you said, she's relapsed. And at what point did you notice a change, and what were the emotions behind that?
That anger that I was talking to you about previously, where she was just like a snake, that was back. Just little things would just drive her insane. She would just get ill about the small, like just things that you would forget about in 5 minutes would cause a world war, And she was super sneaky. Like, she always said that she was somewhere where she wasn't, or this, that, or the other. And she would so we have that Find My iPhone thing, because I like to know where people are. That's just crazy. But she would turn it off for like certain amounts of time. It would just say no location found or whatever. And so then I started being like, well, why are you doing that if you're not doing something that you shouldn't be doing?
Right.
So then me and John, my stepdad, which was her husband at the time, we're starting to get kind of confused about it because we were like, where is she going? What is she doing? And then it ended up coming out that she had relapsed and she was having an affair.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's super powerful.
Yeah. So she had relapsed and she had met some other guy and they were whatever. And then so once that had come out, John came home, and I live in the basement. It's like a finished basement, and their room is right above mine. And he had come home and just went off, because he found out and somebody had told him. And
That's super powerful.
yes, yeah. So she had relapsed and she had met some other guy. You hear that? Ashley?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh my gosh, I just heard like this weirdest sound that just popped up. Sorry. Okay, so anyway, good. That had happened, and then so he came home and he just confronted her about the whole thing, and then she ended up leaving that night.
Okay.
And never came back.
And when you say never came back, like when did she never come back?
She never came back to this house. She never came back to get her things. She never came back to get me. She never came back for anything. She just left.
Okay. So mom just leaves. And are you and mom in contact now? Like, what does that look like? Because
we are in contact. We talk almost every day now.
Okay.
Because at that time, everything that was going on, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had, it was like undiagnosed depression. So It sent me into this downward spiral where I was just someone I didn't even like to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I ended up getting help for that. And then I reached out to my mom and we had talked about it. And I was like, I would rather still be able to talk to you and know that, you're okay than to just alienate you completely. So we still talk, and she still answers the phone when I call, and she's still there. And she actually just paid for my entire wedding. You know what I mean? So like,
wow.
We're really good still. We're not like we were when I was a kid, because I've grown a lot since then. Because even Taylor can account for this. I was not very nice when it came to people with addiction. I didn't see it as the disease that it is back then. I saw it as you're making a choice. You don't want to be around your family. You don't love your family enough. That's how I saw it back then. I don't see it that way anymore. So I think that's why I'm more able to speak with her and just be okay with it all, even though it's not okay, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. So my camera just went out.
I noticed that.
Which is okay. I guess we can do this without my face, right?
I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'll still ask you questions. I can still see you.
Okay.
So, I like where this is going. So how long did you and mom not speak before you were ready to reach out to her again?
This last time?
Yeah.
Months.
Because,
yeah, and this is something else that might not make sense, but it did to me, and it still kind of does, is I tied my newfound relationship with my mom to John. So when he wasn't there anymore and she wasn't at our house anymore, I felt in my head and my heart that I just lost her again. So in order for her to not alienate me, I alienated her to avoid getting hurt. Does that make sense? Ashley?
So is it kind of like, can you hear me?
Yes.
One day we're going to figure this out. So it's kind of like, if I don't have to like see this, then it's not real. Was that kind of the feeling? Or, yeah. Okay. And so what was the turning point where you were like, you know what, like, I'd rather have my mom in my life and kind of risk getting hurt and being fearful. And what made you reach out, and what was that phone call like?
I don't even remember. I remember I had like a breakdown and I just missed her. I would just lay in bed and I would cry, and I would like go upstairs, and like her clothes would still be, it was almost like she had died and she
Right.
was still here, but I had treated it like she died. And so I couldn't do it anymore. Like I just missed her so much. And I was talking to my fiance about it then, and he was telling me, he was like, you call her, like it's still your mom, regardless of what she's done or what she will do.
Mhm.
It is your mom. And yeah, the way he told me to do it, and it did help me, is he said sometimes you just have to accept the person for who they are in that moment and just still be there, because that's something that I have an issue with, is if I don't like what you're doing, I just won't be around. And it's really not a very good characteristic to have, but I guess it's to avoid the hurt that comes with those decisions. So
Mhm.
I would always just, take a step back. I was like, no, what you're doing hurts me and it bothers me and I can't see it. Like I said earlier, it was like me, 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 me. But now it's like, if my mom calls me and she says that she needs money for groceries, no, I'll take you to Walmart, but I'm not giving you money, kind of thing. Like we
Okay.
know where each other stand now, if that makes sense. But the phone call with my mom, whenever it did happen, was very emotional. It was a lot of tears. It was a lot of yelling.
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't understand it. I was like, you've got this perfect home, you've got this perfect family, you've got this perfect man, you've got all these great things, and you're just throwing it away again. Like, why do you do that? My mom's very self-destructive, and she always has been. And
Okay.
that was just another example of her being self-destructive.
Now, when y'all have those conversations, is that something, I mean, are y'all able to kind of talk transparently about that? Like, would you be able to say that to your mother?
Yeah.
Okay. And how does she respond?
It usually depends. Usually she'll the thing about my mom is like, if she knows that what she's done is wrong, then she'll own up to that. Or if she knows that what I'm saying is true, then she'll own up to that. So when I say these things to her, she agrees because she knows. But when it comes to when I would say, you blew everything up because you don't care about me or this, that, or the other, then she's like, no, that's not how it is. And it used to bother me so bad when I was younger, like as a teenager, and my mom or Taylor or other friends would say to me, you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would try so hard to understand. I would sit there, I would do hours of research on addiction and dopamine and serotonin and all the things in your head. And I was just like, why? Why is it, hours of just looking it up? And so that I could, I guess, not understand, because I don't, but empathize.
Okay.
And I always got, that was just my immediate, anytime I would try to have like a discussion with somebody about it, like, well, what you're doing, it's hurtful. It hurts people. It's detrimental. You're hurting yourself. It was always, you don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand. And I didn't. But they never gave me the credit for trying to understand, because I did try. And then I would tell them, well, then if I don't understand, neither do you, because you don't understand what it's like to love somebody that is this self-destructive.
Wow.
Because loving
That's
someone,
like the other end of the circle. Because I'll tell you, as a recovering, addict myself, I know I've had these conversations with my sister, and we talked a little bit about that. She's nothing like me, and we grew up in the same environment, right? And she used to get so upset and so like frustrated with me. And when I was in active addiction, I'll tell you from my perspective, I just was like, God, leave me alone. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to look at the reality that I'm hurting you, because if I have to own up to the fact that I'm hurting you, then maybe I'll have to do something different. And I just was not ready to do something different. And so anytime someone would challenge me, especially if it was out of love, like I would do the about face and just get really defensive.
yeah, that's what every person who I've had this conversation with always did too. They would just be like, it was just defense, and it was anger, and it was lashing out and retaliation. And I mean, because I guess what you're saying is true, because if you acknowledge that you're hurting somebody, then you have to change it. And sometimes you're just not ready to change it.
Okay, so here's the big question, and this is something I like to ask everybody that comes on because I think, and I'm excited to hear your perspective as someone who's not in recovery.
Okay.
Why do you think some people get sober and the majority don't?
Hmm. Probably because of what you just said. When you acknowledge the pain that you're causing onto yourself and others, then you have to accept that it's there. And sometimes people don't want to face that. They don't want to face the hurt, or they don't want to, or even if they're using to cope with something that's caused them pain, like in my mom's case, when you get sober, even after all of those years that the trauma has passed, it's like you have to relive it. And I'm sure that's a terrible feeling, and that probably deters people from getting sober just for the simple fact of the pain and trauma of it. I mean, go
Well,
away.
I'm well, I'm sure. So, I mean, and I have trauma. Taylor has trauma. I'm sure you have trauma, Sam. I mean, everyone has trauma.
Mhm.
So, how is one person's trauma different than another's, right? And what is it about that person that gets them to a point where they're willing to do something different? So in essence, right, what's different, and this is going to be a hard question, what's different about Taylor than what's different about your mom? Someone who's gotten sober and has started building a life, and I mean, obviously, your mom was sober for a while. So
Right.
what do you think that turning point is? What have you seen
Um,
in the people that you care about?
maybe. See, I don't know. That's so hard because everybody does have different traumas, so everyone does experience things differently, and they hurt differently, and
Do you think
I
the people
really
that aren't sober don't want it?
the people that aren't sober don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
Okay. Do you think there are people that want it that just can't get it?
Mhm.
And why do you think that is?
I think that it goes both ways. I think that you can have somebody. I'm sorry, my cat's being annoying. I keep moving.
You're fine.
Um, I feel like you could have somebody who wants the help or wants to start living that lifestyle, but they don't know how, or they don't know how to access it, or even ashamed to ask for help. And then there's the people who are sober or not, they're not sober and they don't even plan on becoming sober. Like, I don't know. It's a running joke in my family that I'm the black sheep because I don't have an addiction.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody that I can think of off the top of my head that I've been around or surrounded myself with or that I've grown up with either is in active addiction or has gotten sober. But there's not really many people who are like me in my family who never had an addiction. So growing up like that was kind of difficult because there wasn't anybody that I could really talk to about it. Like how do you cope with this? Like how do you deal with when your grandmother passes away? And then when my mom was sober, I always had a constant fear that there was going to be something or someone that would send her over the edge and she wouldn't be able to cope with it. It's like a constant fear because, like I said previously, that's what initially started my mom's addiction, was that she couldn't cope with a loss.
Okay.
So whenever people would pass away or something would change in our life, I would immediately be terrified and not even really be able to feel the grief for the loss of the person who just passed away because I'm too busy watching my mom's every move. Just for the fear that, it was going to send her back down this dark, dark place that I never wanted her to go to again.
And what was that fear like? I mean, because I know I can pull from my own personal experience, having loved ones who are active in addiction and myself, but I mean, what was that fear? Was the fear that mom wasn't going to be there the next day? Or, I mean, what?
So my mom, okay, so with my mom's addiction, my mom was addicted to meth.
Okay.
So she just, whenever she would start using again, she looked like the walking dead. You know, she would have the sunken in eyeballs and the cheeks just, you know, and it just was so unhealthy. And then, you know, she would go and like, she would be gone for days at a time. Or like when I would get a call that she was in jail, I would feel relief. You know, like I was like, okay, well, that means she's sleeping. That means that she's eating. That means that she can shower. That means that she can do these things, because when she wasn't at home and she wasn't in jail, I didn't know where she was. You know, so I was always scared of that. Like just the absence of her again, because that, I mean, being 5 through 15 without having like your mom there every day to like, you know, give you baths and brush your hair and pack your lunch and all that it takes a toll on you. And even because it wasn't traditional to live with your grandparents, you know, people would judge that. They would be like, well, where's your parents? Like, why do you live with your grandparents? Like, blah, 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 blah. And even Taylor knows about that because we went to school together. People would always question that. Like, where's your mom? Why doesn't your mom bring you to school? Why doesn't your mom come to your cheering competition? Why doesn't your mom do this? You know, so like having to explain those, and then having that constant fear in the back of my head that if I tell them that my mom has a drug addiction, then I'm going to be taken away, you know? So it was always just, it was just a scary thing to.
And so what did you tell those kids? Like when that question was asked, I mean, what was your answer?
I would say because I wanted to go to Gwinnett County schools, and my dad lived in Monroe and my mom lived in Barrow County.
Okay, so you kind of had your like standard stock answer that you kind of gave everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would say I just wanted to go to Tequila. So my grandmother lived in that school district, so I lived with her. The only person that I went to school with that actually knew the truth about my home life was Taylor.
Wow. How crazy. And then she grows up and to kind of have the same problem and go through that whole thing. I mean, that's intense.
That's why when me and Taylor we'd have moments where we weren't good, where we weren't on talking terms, where I wouldn't even pick up if she called me. You know, we had those moments. And because for me, when it came to Taylor using, it felt, again, back to where it was like me. I took it as a personal betrayal against myself because she knew everything that I had to deal with at home. She knew everything that I had to deal with just on a personal level with addiction. And then I was like, why couldn't you see the pain through me to know that this isn't a route that you want to take? And so whenever she was in addiction, we didn't really talk that much because I mean, it just broke me. Because, I mean, I knew Taylor from 11 years old, you know? So when you see somebody go from such innocence and then you just start seeing their downward. And then at the same time, though, I'm the first person that she ever had a drink of alcohol with. So, you know, like, it goes both ways. It's like I would be like angry at her for doing certain things, but then I'm the one that kind of introduced it.
Oh, wow.
So
I hear some blame then. Is there a part of you that like blames yourself for that moment?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yes.
So you made Taylor a drug addict?
No.
Okay.
But I think I probably shouldn't have given her tequila at 12 years old.
Okay. But how, I mean, and I get that. So like shame and guilt goes both ways, right? So as addicts in recovery, I mean, we deal with that. And, but I think as adult children of alcoholics, I mean, the thing that's so crazy about someone in active addiction or someone in recovery and then an adult child of an alcoholic is that we experience the same feelings, right? But our feelings are kind of disproportionate. So it's like my feelings of shame and guilt and remorse come from, you know, the hurt and the pain that I've done to the people in my life. And then an adult child of an alcoholic experiences those same feelings, right? Guilt, shame, remorse. What if I should have done this? I should have done that. And so we're kind of experiencing the same emotions. And it turns into this addictive cycle, right? Where it's like the adult child of an alcoholic wants to love you more, love you more, love you more. And then they get to a point where they get scared and back away. And the addict is just constantly saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then pushing you away when you get too close to their addiction. And so they kind of feed off each other.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And I think so, and that'll bring us into kind of our next question, which I'm interested to hear from someone who's not an alcoholic.
Okay.
Do you think tough love works? And what does tough love mean to you?
I don't know, because I used to try to do that. But I don't think mine was tough love. I think it was just hostility and anger. And I couldn't really differentiate how to show tough love and not be just hateful.
That's an amazing answer, because I see that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know where the line was, or maybe I did. And I just said, screw it. I'm just going to cross it. You cross the line, I'll cross the line. So tough love, maybe done correctly, would probably work. But tough love the way that I did it, no. I think it would probably just make the person feel more down about themselves and want to go use or want to go drink or want to, because I was a below the belt kind of person. Like I would say things that I knew intentionally would hurt you. I don't know why. I guess that was just my way of fighting back. But I think if tough love was done right, it would probably work.
And what does tough love done right, what does that look like?
Maybe distancing, but the person still knowing that you are there, or answering the phone when they call if you know that they need you, but still being like, okay, I don't appreciate what you're doing. Like the choices that you're making affect me. The life that you're living affects me. And I think that you need to do this or that, or just being helpful, but still being at your own safe distance so that you don't get hurt. Because the thing about loving an addict, and I can say this 100%, it's like blowing out your own candle so that they'll have a flame.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like you will give and give and give everything of yourself, and they will take and take and take. And then there's no happy medium, because at the end, like me, I would just be completely defeated and devastated. And then that person is still out doing whatever it is that they want to do. But I had given so much. So for me, when it comes to a point where I actually walk away, it's really, 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 really bad, because I will literally give everything, every part of myself to somebody. And that's really not good when it comes to dealing with somebody that's dealing with addiction, because like I said, somebody in active addiction is going to take everything that you give them. So, and that's probably why my tough love didn't work, because once I got to that level where I felt like I was being taken advantage of, or I was giving too much, then I would get angry.
And then you would get
and
resentful,
I would be like,
right, and kind of throw it back, right, which is totally normal.
Yeah, I would get very resentful, very angry, and I would just be like, all the things that you've done to me, like, no, you can deal with what I'm about to say to you. You can handle it. Grow up. You can handle it. And looking back at it now, it's like, I wouldn't even be able to handle the things that I was saying to myself.
Right.
Like it was cold-blooded. Like if somebody was saying those things to me, it would devastate me. So I can't even imagine now, as an adult, looking back at me then, just being so malice and just cruel.
And what do you think that was? You just think it was like pent up pain, like, God, I love these people, and you shouldn't know how to let it out?
Yeah, I just always felt like I was second choice to a substance.
Wow.
And that never sat right with me, because like I said, I'd give and give and give. But in the end of the day, you're still going to leave and go get high, or you're going to leave and go get drunk, and you're going to lie to me about it. And you're going to tell me that you're good, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're just going to lie. And it being second choice to anything is devastating, but being second choice to a substance,
Especially
not
when
even
you
a
don't
person.
understand it, right? It's like, how on earth
Yeah.
is this more powerful, than the love I'm giving you?
Yeah, and growing up, I would be like, because there was a certain part of me that never wanted to touch it because I was scared I would like it, and then there was another part of me that wanted to see what all the hype was about. Like, why is
Right.
it so good that you're going to leave your daughter, or why is it so good that you lie to your best friend, or what? You know what I mean? Like, what is so great?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I had a lot of talks with like myself and with God and everything like that. And I just knew that that wasn't the path that I needed to take because I have so much addiction around me. I was terrified that it would consume me. So I decided that it wasn't the best idea and that I would just rather not know. And then as I grew up, I realized it's not really being second choice to a substance, but when you're 15, 16 and your emotions and your hormones are going crazy and you because when Taylor's addictions was like at its height is when my mom had just gotten clean, so it was like I just got off the hook with this one and then now I've just been thrown off a cliff again.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, okay, this problem solved and now I've got my mom back, right? And it's like, holy shit, now my best friend. Like,
yeah. It literally felt like I was pushed off a cliff. And you know that feeling in your stomach, like when you're going on a roller coaster, it like takes you away?
Yeah, that's why I don't get on them.
That's what it felt like every single day.
Wow. And so then mom gets high again, right? And Taylor enters recovery.
Taylor gets clean.
Wow. I mean, that is a roller coaster. What a story, Sam.
Yeah.
So have you, and I'm sure like going through this, I'm sure you've learned a lot. I can only imagine like going through it with your mom and your best friend, and you've mentioned some other people in your life. How has your relationship with Taylor changed? Do you feel like it's deeper now since she's gotten sober?
Yeah. Because when Taylor was in active addiction, we didn't really have much that we had in common anymore. Like me and Taylor both have kind of like obsessive personalities. So when we're into something, we're really into it, And when I would go to her house, she used to live in South Georgia, and I would go there, and she had this person at the time who
You didn't like the drugs, you didn't like the boyfriend.
Huh?
You didn't like the drugs, you didn't like the boyfriend.
Yeah, and the boyfriend could not stand me because
like,
he said
gosh darn it.
He said I was like the most boring.
You were the most, I said, gosh darn it, if Taylor could just see what I see, her life would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
The boyfriend hated me because I wouldn't get high. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. Like, and I was always like trying to make her not do these things. So he could not stand me.
Right. Because you're a threat.
Yeah. I was like threatening the path that him and Taylor were taking together. And he didn't like that. And for a while, me and Taylor didn't talk because, the addiction and the boy and all of these things. But the thing about Taylor and I is, regardless of how long we didn't talk, if she sent me a text and said, I really need you, call me, I'm going to call. If she said, I really need you, can you come here? I'm going to drive 4 hours. That's just the relationship that we always had. But looking back at it now, that friendship that I cherished then is nothing compared to the one that I cherish now. That one was very superficial. It was more strictly for the title, like, oh yeah, this is my best friend. This is, now it's like this person means more to me than I can physically or verbally express to you. It's like I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs, I've seen inside and out of, her life and her struggles and her trials and tribulations, and being able to see where she is now, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I mean, you were the maid of honor at our wedding. I mean, that was cool. It was cool getting to know you and see y'all's relationship there. And just seeing how different you are. You know what I mean? Like, because you are like very like this is the way things are, and like and Taylor's not. Right. And so seeing the two of you interact was really, really cool for me. So did you think that Taylor was going to get sober? So when all of this happened and she ended up at the halfway house, I mean, how were you feeling? Were you like, the ball's going to drop like it has with my mom? Or were you hopeful? I mean, how were you thinking about that?
The thing about it for me is my moral about addiction, or not moral, but my quote, or like what I think of to help me get through someone who's sober or working towards being sober or in a relapse, is I always say to expect the worst, but hope for the best. That way I wasn't so disappointed. But this go around with Taylor, because I've seen Taylor get sober a couple times, you
Right.
know?
Mm-hmm.
But this time, I actually felt like it was different because she was talking in the most positive ways, and she never did that before. She would just focus on the negative things that had happened, or this had happened, or that had happened, or she caused this to happen, or just a lot of blame and guilt like we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But this Taylor is more like, I mean, I messed up then, you know what I mean? Like, she's not going to pretend like she didn't, but she's more focused on what she can do now to make everything good. You know what I mean? It's not dwelling on what happened then. It's focusing on bettering her life for her and her husband and her kids and just being the best person that she can be. And that wasn't how she ever was before. It was just negative, 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 negative. And so once I noticed that she was more optimistic about life and about things that she was in control of now, I was like, who is this? This is a whole different person. I like her. So yeah, I mean, I have full faith in Taylor, and I know that she's gonna do wonderful things. I know she's gonna raise a beautiful baby. I know her and Jason are gonna live long, happy lives together, and there's nothing that makes me happier.
That's amazing. That's so cool to hear you say. I love Taylor too. So anybody that supports her, I'm like a total fan of. Okay, so we're gonna end with this, and it's gonna be kind of I hope it doesn't make you uncomfortable, but if you were talking to somebody in active addiction and say it was your mother, say it was Taylor, what would your advice be to them? What would you want them to hear from you, from somebody who's seen it, who's been through it, and who has truly been impacted by it? Because I can imagine, and we're not going to go into it on this live, but that a lot of your life has been impacted by addiction and your behaviors and your fears. But what would you want them to hear?
Just to keep pushing. Because, I mean, people who are working towards recovery, like you were talking about earlier, they feel like if something happens and they do something, then it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with that. I don't think that you failed. I just think that you found another way that wasn't right. So just keep trying until you find what sticks for you. Just keep push. Don't give up just because you had a slip up or because you did something that you shouldn't have done or because you're feeling guilty about something. Make that the reason that you keep going, so that you can look back in 2-3 years and be like, you remember when I did that and I was like, man, I'm never going to make it through this. And then look at you now. I would just say to keep pushing.
Oh, that's amazing. That's better advice than I think any of us could give each other. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Sam, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been really insightful for me. I think I'm going to call my sister once we get off of this and just tell her how much I love her. You remind me a lot of her, which is really neat.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah, she's cool too, so it's a compliment.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, and I'll be glad to do it anytime that you want. If you think of any other questions that only somebody who hasn't experienced addiction can answer, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Absolutely. I know that this was a risk coming on. I mean, it's a public group, and like these are kind of touchy subjects. So I really appreciate you being willing and working through our technical difficulties with cameras going out and weird noises. But I think people will get a lot out of this. I know I have, and I love you, and I love that you love Taylor. And I think we'll end it. Yeah.
Hey, well, I love you too, and thank you for having me.